Okay, Parshas Bay. I want to discuss something today that over the past few years I've mentioned pieces of, but I want to put it together to a certain shleimus for today, about a certain element, the pnimius of what was happening by Yetzias Mitzrayim. If you follow the story, what happened from Makkah to Makkah, you find that Paroi let go slowly. I mean, ultimately, they all went out, be'etzem hayoim hazeh, but Paroi let go slowly. First he said, go, but v'harchek lo yisarchiku lalechet. Don't go so far away. Then he was finally masking that he can't control how far away they go. So he said, L'chuna hagvarim in this week's parasha. The women and the children should stay behind. His focus was that the children should stay behind. And then finally, when Moshe Rabbeinu said, no, everyone's coming, he said, Rak tzoinchem uvekarchem yutzag. So let at least the animals stay. Right? Vayikra Paroi el Moshe, by Shlishi and Parashas Bay, Vayikra Paroi el Moshe, Vayomer L'chu ivdu es Hashem, Rak tzoinchem uvekarchem yutzag. Your sheep and your cattle should stay in its place, Rashi says. Gam tabchem yelech imachem, even your children can go with you. But you see this process of slowly but surely Paroi being forced to let go and trying to hold on to as much as he can for as long as he can until he finally had to relinquish everything. When Paroi told Moshe Rabbeinu that he thinks that the Klal Yisrael should leave the animals behind, so Moshe Rabbeinu responded with a very unusual pasuk. He said, Vayomer Moshe, Gam ata titein biyodenu zvachim va'olos. You too will give in our hands karbanos, zvachim va'olos, ve'osinu l'Hashem Elokeinu, which we will bring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not only that, v'gam mikneinu yelech imanu, and also our cattle will go with us. Lo yisishar parsa, nothing will be left over, not even a footstep will be left over. Ki mimenu nikach la'aved es Hashem, because it's from there that we will take when we need to serve Hashem. So there's many, many issues with these two psukim, where Moshe tells Paroi that you too will give in our hands karbanos. First of all, it never happened. In the whole story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, we do not find that Paroi gave karbanos to Moshe and to Klal Yisrael. So Moshe said, you too will give us karbanos, and it just never happened. Now, fascinatingly, is that a word? Dr. Hack says it's a word, then it's a word.
I don't know if it's a word, but I would use it.
Okay, that's good enough for me. Okay? So, Gam ato titein biyodenu zvachim va'olos, the Ramban says, Moshe, loy omar Moshe davar zeh al menas lehei osos. Moshe did not say this so that it should be done. And in fact, v'lo yasa kein klal, he did no such thing. Unbelievable. The pasuk says, Moshe says, you too will give us karbanos. And the Ramban says, he didn't mean it. Rather, it was divrei chizuk. It was words. It doesn't mean chizuk. It was words of chizuk. He was strengthening his argument. And he was saying that the wrath of Hashem is going to come down on you so severely that you would do anything to get rid of us. You would even give us karbanos to bring to Hashem to get rid of us. That's how badly you will want us to leave. Ad ki gam zvachim va'olos v'chol asher loy yitein ba'ad nafshay. Okay, but still, what did Moshe mean? There must be some meaning. It's not just, Moshe was just saying it to threaten him. It was posturing. There's no deeper meaning. There's no message or rationale behind Moshe Rabbeinu saying, you too will give us zvachim va'olos. Also, It's a little bit interesting that later on, if you're looking at a Chumash, Yud Beis, Lamed Beis, 1232, you could find this pasuk. Later on, when they actually do leave, so Paro is sending them out. He said, go, take everything, just go. So Paro tells them, Gam tzeinchem, Gam bekarchem, also your sheep, also your cattle, kechu, take, ka'asher dibartem, like you spoke, valechu, and go. And Rashi says, what do you mean like you spoke? Rashi says, Gam ato titein biyodenu zvachim va'olos. Paro said, take your cattle and take your sheep, like you said that I'm going to give you karbanos. That doesn't follow. It should have said, like you said, v'gam mekneinu yelech imanu. Rashi is picking the wrong pasuk. Rashi should have said, like you said, we will take our animals. That would have made sense. When Paro said, take your animals like you spoke, it means like you spoke that you'll take your animals. Not that I'll give you karbanos, because I'm not doing that. This is a big problem. If you look at the Ramban, at the end of the Ramban, he seems to be aimed on this, because this Rashi is based on a Mechilta, but it's very problematic. Another question for you. To say that Paro will give oilos, an oila is a carbon that's completely consumed on the Mizbeach. Okay, that makes sense, because non-Jews are able to bring offerings to the Beis HaMikdash, and the offering that they're allowed to bring is oilos. But zvachim usually refers to a carbon shlamim. That's usually what zvachim means. It usually means carbon shlamim. Zvachim va'olos means shlamim va'olos, b'pashtus. Paro is going to give carbon shlamims? I thought Goyim can't give carbon shlamims. Okay, I guess it could mean he's going to give animals that will be used for carbon shlamim, but it says Gam ato titen biyodenu zvachim ve'olos. That's not an except. A shlamim is an animal, is a carbon that not only is part of it consumed on the mizbeach, but a significant part of it is eaten by the one who brings the carbon shlamim. Another question. If you ask me to leave my stuff with you, so is it appropriate for you to say, you're also going to give me stuff, and also I'm going to take my own stuff? That doesn't follow. It's the other way. First of all, no, you can't have it. I'm taking my stuff. Not only that, you're going to give me your stuff. That's the way it should be said. But the pasuk says it the other way around. It says, Gam ato titein biyodenu zvachim va'olos. Paro, you're going to give us karbanos. V'gam. And also, mikneinu yelech imanu. Our cattle will go with us. Yeah, obviously, if I'm going to give you animals, you're going to take your own animals. It's out of order. What's the pshat in the Seder Hafach here? And finally, Sam Sefer says this ha'ara. When it says, V'gam mikneinu yelech imanu, that our cattle will go with us. Some say it sounds a little bit like our cattle will make a decision to go with us. Your cattle doesn't go with you. You take your cattle. It doesn't make the decision. You do. It should have said v'gam mikneinu nikach, and also our cattle we will take. Corrected Sam Sefer. Why does it? Our cattle will go with us. Like it will sit there and go like, should we go or shouldn't we go? We're gonna go. V'gam mikneinu yelech imanu. It's not the way. Cattle is not a. They don't have a right to vote. You know what I mean? Like they don't. The cattle's opinion is not really what we're asking. What's going on here? Okay. So let's remember the basics here, and then we can lean in and understand what's happening here. There's a process in the Makos of Mitzrayim that the Sfarim talk about, and it's important to remind ourselves from time to time of this process. And it comes from a pasuk in Yeshaya that says, that describes the Makos of Mitzrayim as being what the pasuk calls Nagoif v'Rafai. Nagoif v'Rafai, the affliction and the healing. Now the simple translation is that each Makkah had the period of the Makkah, the plague, and then it had a period of healing. And then it had a plague, and then it was healed. And then there was a plague, and then it was healed. It was Nagaif v'Rafai. But Chazal tell us that Nagaif v'Rafai means something much deeper. It means Nagaif l'Mitzrayim v'Rafai liYisrael. Meaning that each Makkah accomplished something incredibly deep in leading up to this Yitzias Mitzrayim, which changed the entire fabric of the universe. And what this means is that each Makkah we focus and we're told about the damage, the hezek, the uprooting that each Makkah did to the civilization, to the society of Mitzrayim. And we know that it destroyed Mitzrayim to the point that there was, by Yinatzlu es Mitzrayim, Mitzrayim was done. Mitzrayim was cleaned out, sucked dry by the time Klal Yisrael left. But what's beneath the surface is that with each Makkah, Klal Yisrael also gained something. It wasn't just a Makkah to Mitzrayim, but it was a refuah to Klal Yisrael. And with each Makkah, there were koiches that were being added to the spiritual oitzrois, to the spiritual storehouses of Klal Yisrael, different koiches that would help them be the nation that we are, that would give them the ability to be able to serve Hashem properly. And each Makkah was Nagoif l'Mitzrayim at the same time that it was Rafai liYisrael. And part of that process is that we know that when Klal Yisrael was in Mitzrayim, they were very, very stuck. They were very tragically stuck in Mitzrayim. They couldn't escape. They were on a very low spiritual level. We don't know how many of them, we don't know what the percentages are, but we know there was a significant tzibur that served Avodah Zarah. There were certainly certain attributes that they had that set them apart, that served as zechuyos for them to be taken out of Mitzrayim, but they were very sunk into the impurities and the decadence of the culture of Mitzrayim, Ervas Haaretz, and they were very stuck there. And part of the process of Yitzias Mitzrayim was to free them from the tentacles of that lowly existence. I mean, if you can imagine, they were slaves living the hardest lives of the greatest persecution imaginable. The descriptions in Midrashim, we clean it up a little bit for the kids, but if you look at the Midrashim, it was a brutal, brutal, brutal experience where there was death and destruction all around them constantly. I can imagine what that does to the spirit, what that does to the nefesh. And add to that it was a decadent place that was full of Avodah Zarah. There was no mention of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When Moshe came and said, Hashem said, take the people out, Paro's first reaction is, who? Me, Hashem. There was no Hashem there. So part of the process of Yitzias Mitzrayim is that through the Makkos, Paro's grip lightened. And they became possible over that year of not doing work. They found themselves and they became stronger and they became more grounded spiritually until they were able to bring a Karban Pesach and be freed. And that represents for us a certain kind of freeing ourselves from our own Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara of a person tries to enslave it in keeping it away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Paroi, the Mesilas Yesharim famously uses Paroi as a mashal for the Yetzer Hara. Paroi represents all that tries to keep us stunted, all that tries to keep us stuck, all that tries to prevent us from flowering, from growing, from becoming. Paroi represents all of that koyach. And Yitzias Mitzrayim represents the koyach to free ourselves from the grip of such an oppressive stuckness. With that in mind, we could look back at the progression of the Makkos and see that first Paroi said, you could go, but don't go so far. You can hear your Yetzer Hara saying that. Go do a mitzvah, whatever, make sure you come back to me. Go, but don't go so far. And finally, Moshe says, that's not an option, we're going. So Paroi says, let the women and children stay here. Meaning that we know that, like Mashal, once the Torah is given, so the mitzvah of 24-hour a day Talmud Torah is a mitzvah given to the men. The man's job is to bring spirituality home, and the wife accepts that from him and builds a home based on that. Paro is like, no, the home stays here. You want to go do your thing, have an event, go have a retreat or something with God, that's great. The home stays here. Let the children stay here. The Yetzer Hara still wants control of the home. The Yetzer Hara still wants control of the children. Moshe's like, I'm sorry, that's not happening. We are going ki chag l'Hashem. Paro says, okay, but leave the animal. I want to talk to you about what that means. When Paro says leave the animal, Paro is saying something very, very deep. And I want to use a mashal. We've kind of been a theme the last few weeks to jump around a little bit. I want to use a mashal from much later on in the Torah to understand what I mean when I talk about Paro saying, leave the animal. Okay? Many, many years later, Hashem told Moshe to speak to a rock, and it will give forth its water, and it will be a Kiddush Hashem. And Moshe Rabbeinu, it's not for now to go into the details on why Moshe Rabbeinu did this, but Moshe Rabbeinu did not listen to Hashem's command, and Moshe Rabbeinu, again, for very complex reasons, Moshe Rabbeinu chose to hit the rock instead, and water came out. And the truth is, if you think about it, it's, I think, arguably the same kind of miracle to get water to come out of a rock that you speak to, and water to come out of a rock that you hit. I think they're equally miraculous. And yet, Moshe Rabbeinu was not able to go into Eretz Yisrael. He got the worst of punishments because he hit the rock instead of speaking to the rock. And you see from there a very valuable lesson about how to interact with the physical part of ourselves. We have a spiritual, intellectual, yearning, driven part of ourselves, and we have a lazy, more physical, more indulgent, more yearning for lack of movement, staying still and just enjoying pleasure. We have that part of ourselves as well. And there are different ways that we could relate, the two parts of us could relate, because there's quite the milchama, as the Mesilas Yesharim says, going on inside of us. There's a milchama going on between our chelik haruchni and our chelik hagashmi. And there are different ways of doing it. You could hit the rock, or you could speak to the rock. Hit the rock means that, look, let me say it in a very immature way, and then we'll say it a little bit more sophisticated, okay? Hit the rock means like this. It's time for shul. So I got to go to shul. My body doesn't want to go. But I'm in charge. So I say to my body, listen up, mister. We're going to shul now. That's what we're doing. You don't have to like it, and you don't have to want to. But I'm stronger. And I'm forcing you to shul. And then, we've talked about this upstairs in our davenings a couple of times, the image in my mind of that is somebody schlepping a body. Is somebody walking, just schlepping like a carcass behind him, And sometimes we walk into shul feeling that, like schlepping like this physical dead weight with you. That's bullying yourself to serve Hashem. First of all, it has limited effectiveness. And second of all, it's not whole in serving Hashem. It's basically a war taking place inside of me where one side wins. But that's not the mevukash, that's not what we want. When the parsha says, when the Rashi says in the first parsha of Kriya Shema, B'chol levavcha, b'shnei yitzarecha, to serve Hashem with the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, what Rashi is saying is to try to develop a ratzain, even in the chelik hagashmi, the chelik hagufni of a person, also a ratzain to serve Hashem. Like, brings to mind the zemer that we say on Friday night, Libi uvesari yiranenu lekel chai. That my body should want to serve Hashem. Get my body involved. That even the lower parts of me value this relationship with Hashem and want to serve Hashem. And that's the mashal of speaking to the rock. Where I speak to the rock, I engage with the rock, and I speak to it, and I inspire it, and I make it serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu because it's so much as yearning to do that. I develop a yearning in it. Suddenly, this hitting the rock and speaking to the rock become two very, very, very different things. And therefore, when Paroi says, leave the animals here, what Paroi was saying was, you want to serve Hashem, serve Hashem. Don't learn how to get your body involved in that. Don't allow the ruchnius to seep in and to affect. I, Paroi, want to own the guf. Tzainchem uvekarchem yutzag. There's also the animal in me. There's the sheep in me, the cattle in me. And Paroi is saying, let it stay chained to Mitzrayim. Don't have a relationship with Hashem where you bring all of you to it. Rather, if you have to go out and serve Hashem sometimes, do that and then come back home to me, because your body is still mine. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Paroi, you don't know what's going to be in our first parsha of Kriyat Shema, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to teach us that the Yetzer Hara himself should participate in serving Hashem. B'shnei Yitzarecha, the Yetzer Hara itself should participate in serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you don't know that. And the way that Moshe expresses that in words that the Ramban says Moshe never meant to practically implement these words, but boy did he mean them when he said, Gam ata titein biyodenu zvachim v'olos. You are also going to give us karbanos to Hashem. What's a carbon? A carbon is when I take something physical and I bring it towards ruchnius. I bring it to the mizbeach. That's what a carbon is. So Moshe Rabbeinu was telling Paroi, you want that you should own the animal? You want to own the animal? No. You're providing more for the Yetzer Tov. You're providing for Ruchnius. Gam ato titein biyodenu zvachim v'olos. You're going to give us more wherewithal to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're going to provide more meat for the fire. You're going to provide more, a more spacious and more inclusive and more wholesome kind of Avodas Hashem. Because Paroi, I'm sorry, not only are you not getting our bodies, but you, the Yetzer Hara, are going to provide us. You're going to let go of the body, which maybe is associated with him, and you're going to provide us with the ability to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Gam ato titein biyodenu zvachim v'olos. And that's why he uses the lashon of zvachim, because the shlamim is a carbon that even though Goyim can't bring a shlamim, but as the Ramban says, it was just lasois chizuk lidvarav. He never really practically meant that Paroi should bring a carbon, but he did mean that Paroi, you're going to provide us with a way to serve Hashem with our bodies. Which carbon do you serve Hashem more with your body? It's true, even a carbon oila, you're bringing something physical to the mizbeach. But the carbon shlamim, you're bringing something physical to the mizbeach, and you're participating by eating. You're participating by indulging. Because even eating could be part of serving Hashem. Because Paroi gave that to us. Gam ato titein biyodenu zvachim v'olos. But Moshe didn't say how that's going to happen. The second pasuk is not saying, and furthermore. The second pasuk is saying, now let me explain to you how this plays out practically. Practically, the way this plays out is v'gam mikneinu yelech imanu. Our cattle is coming with us. Our animal is coming out with us. Our chelek habahami is going to stand by our Sinai. Gam mikneinu yelech imanu. And that's why it says yelech. That's why it says that the animal decides to go, because it's a speaking to the rak relationship. We're in ma'ir the guf to participate in avodas Hashem. So v'gam mikneinu yelech imanu yelech me'atzma yelech me'ritzaynai. Okay. That's what I think is going on here. I think it answers all the questions that I asked, why the order is switched, and what the meaning is gamato titein biyodenu, and what the pshat is, the gamiknenu yelech. And it also answers the question that I asked on the Rashi later on, when Paroi says, take your animals, ka'asher dibartem, says Rashi b'shem the mechilta, gamato titein biyodenu zvachim v'olos. Doesn't make sense. Taking my animals is what we said, the gamiknenu yelech imanu, not gamato titein biyodenu zvachim v'olos. But lefi what we're saying, it's beautiful. Paroi was saying, take the animals kasher dibartem. Yes, I am giving you zvachim va'olos. I'm allowing even the guf to go out. The Yetzer Hara is stepping back and saying even the Yetzer Hara is participating in serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The v'gam ata titem yodenu zvachim va'olos is accomplished through gam tzainchem, gam bekarchem kechu. Okay. I want to add one nekuda here. Just, not that this whole shtickle is not dessert. It's already in ganzen dessert, but sometimes even a dessert can have a dessert. And, what? The cherry on top. So, I want to say the following. There's a lot of gams here. You're thinking about that. Gam ato titem biyodenu, v'gam eknenu, and later on also, gam tzainchem, gam bekarchem. What's this gam? So, I want to say over, very short, very bekitzer, what my Rosh Yeshiva said over once on Purim. Purim is, after all, coming. Purim is on the way. And I know it's, what? Yeah, it's pre-Tu B'Shvat. It's pre-Tu B'Shvat, but still. I want to say like this. Chazal tell us, we say in Shoshanas Yaakov, exactly what Rabbi David is referring to, we say in Shoshanas Yaakov, we end up with Gam Charvayna Zachor Latov. Now Charvayna, Chazal tell us, is Eliyahu Hanavi, or at least it was the nitzutz of Eliyahu Hanavi. I don't know how these things work, but there's some connection to Eliyahu Hanavi, and that's why we say in Shoshanas Yaakov, Gam Charvayna Zachor Latov. Zachor Latov is something we say in Eliyahu. Eliyahu is Zachor Latov. Stam about Tzadikim, we say that Zechrein Levracha. On Eliyahu, it's unique that we say Zachor Latov. And the reason we say Zachor Latov by Eliyahu is because Eliyahu, the Rav Hutner Zecher Tzadik Levracha, explained that the reason we say Zachor Latov is because he never experienced Dayan HaEmes. He never died. He went up alive. So because Eliyahu never died, he's like Shaykh to only Tov. There's no Tzad Hara. The average person was born and died. He has both Tov and Ra. But Eliyahu just experienced Tov. So he's Zachor Latov. There's no Ra. And that Ha'ara of Eliyahu is somehow shown in Charvayna. What happened by Charvayna? So by Charvayna, Haman was already in trouble and probably would already be killed. But B'chamasai, in his anger, the king decided to take a walk in his orchard. And he went out into the orchard, and that's where enter Charvayna. Charvayna comes in, and Charvayna tells Achashverosh, V'gam Charvayna, V'gam hine ha'etz asher heichin Haman l'Mordechai. Here's the tree that Haman was making. Vayomer hamelech teluhu alav. Meaning that Charvayna is the one that brought about V'nahapoichu. Charvayna is the one that brought about that very tree that was supposed to hang Mordechai, hung Haman. That very tree that was the epitome of bad, the epitome of Ra, the epitome of everything distant from Avodas Hashem, the murder of the Gadol Adar, that tree is going to be the epitome of the Kiddush Hashem. V'nahapoichu. And Charvayna brought that about. What does that tell you? That tells you that the idea of Charvayna, the idea is that even that which seems so not is. That's the also, and also, v'gam Charvayna. Where do we see that phrase? Nachamish Gamzu, right? Gamzu l'toiva. What's Gamzu l'toiva? Even that which you would think is shayach to Ra, even that's l'toiva. So that's the word. That's where Eliyahu Hanavi comes in to show, no, there's no Ra. It's all kulay. Even that which you think is the most clearest example of pure evil, no, that also serves the good. The gam charvayna zachor latov. So that's what I want to say, that when we're dealing with a situation where, of course, the neshama wants to serve Hashem, but the body wants to do Averis. The body doesn't want to serve Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu keeps saying, Gam atotite biyodenu zvachim b'olos. Not just the neshama like you think, but also that which is so much on the other side. V'gam miknenu ye'elechim loim. V'gam tzainchem. V'gam bekarchem. There's this idea of v'gam because v'gam comes into play when it's like, and that's the definition of v'gam, it's when not only what you think, but v'gam, even that which you didn't think. Yashikayach. Here.